Welcome back to One Life Radio. This is Bernadette with Alan North and Sean Wells, and we've got Elise in the control room, and our special guest today is Meryl Cromer. She is the president and CEO of Jeffrey Bean Foundation Alzheimer's Initiative. Meryl is an Emmy Award-winning reporter, veteran TV producer, and business talk show host. She is president and CEO of the Jeffrey Bean Foundation Alzheimer's Initiative, which promotes early diagnosis, innovation challenges, and national public service campaigns like Jeffrey Bean, Rock Stars of Science. And Meryl, welcome to the show. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you, Bernadette. And tell the guys there that with Jeffrey Bean, I could dress them both from head to toe, and 100% of the net profits fund philanthropy, from cancer to wounded warriors. We go across diseases, including Alzheimer's.
Well, and I love companies that are philanthropic. I don't know if you heard the opening. I was talking about Lush and their initiative to put an end to fur trade. They're fighting the fur trade business. And, you writing this New York Times best-selling book, Slow Dancing with a Stranger, and 100% of the proceeds, the profits that you make, will support Alzheimer's research. I commend you for that. How honorable. Like seriously.
That's awesome.
A lot of people would never do that.
Well, I have to tell you, of all the diseases, we are the most underfunded in this country at a time when this disease will be epidemic. If we were worried about Ebola, we should really be worried about Alzheimer's. The difference is, with an infectious disease, it comes on fast and everyone's scared. With Alzheimer's, there's still no cure. It's fatal, but it's slow and torturous in its own way. So just the sheer fact that the baby boom generation, there's 76 million of us, which is telling you my age. But, we're turning 65 at the rate of 10,000 a day, 4 million a year for the next 15 years. And so you can see a train wreck coming, and our government is just not as engaged. We can respond to infectious diseases, but look what we did with cancer, look what we did with HIV/AIDS. We need to do the same thing for Alzheimer's. And I just set out to write a very honest book about the disease.
What made you want to write this book, Slow Dancing with a Stranger?
Well, I'm going to be very honest. I didn't want to write a book. The reporter in me said, we really need an honest conversation, because what's happened when you live in a disease where there is no cure, you have to help people live in the moment and get through each day. So a lot of the things that are written, and I actually Googled Alzheimer's disease, and I think 11,000 books came up, and I said, do we really need another Alzheimer's book?
Yeah.
But they speak about a tribute to a loved one, of who they were, but nobody tells the truth about how hard this is. And I thought, well, I'm just going to write an honest book. And now I walk into a room, and quite frankly, I feel very naked. I was too honest, perhaps, but I felt that we had to have an honest disease if we were going to get people again upset enough about the disease to demand that we get better funding from Congress and the White House. We pay lip service, and the caregivers are getting sick. I never paid attention to that, because you're trying to take care of a loved one, and it's like 24/7. It's like having a baby. And all families are being touched by this, but the caregivers are now the second victim. And we always think, the caregivers are healthy. Well, guess what? That's not the case. So it all of a sudden, writing forces you to be reflective. And then I saw all of these other issues that I had been ignoring, because I myself have been a caregiver. My husband got early onset Alzheimer's, and that is about 5 to 10% of the population. Diagnostics are getting better. It typically comes on later in life, but it starts when you're about 40. Your brain cells start getting clogged, and it becomes full-blown about 15 to 20 years later. So,
wow.
We're sort of ticking time bombs, and we don't even know it.
How hard was it how hard was it for you to watch your husband, slowly change with the disease?
Well, there were several issues with my husband. He was misdiagnosed, and that still happens today, by the way.
Really? With what?
If you go back 20 years, because we started about 20 years ago, they thought it was depression. They thought he had Lyme disease. They thought it was mad cow's disease. It was everything but Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Because back then it was only at autopsy could you really tell, and you didn't want to give people the diagnosis. Today, they don't want to give people a diagnosis because the doctors feel, well, we don't have anything to treat. And in the book, I really say you've got to tell families because it is so disruptive. The behaviors are disruptive. The people, their personalities change, and everybody's slightly different. Some people can get really soft and mellow, and then others get very aggressive. And my husband was so strong that no facility would take us.
Wow.
So I left my career to bring him home and figure it out as we went. But the biggest mistake, and the guys will appreciate this, I had seen people in wheelchairs in facilities, and I thought, well, my husband's young, I'm not going to do that. And I took him to the gym, and, he was a long-distance runner and fit, and halfway through a repetition, he'd forget what to do. So I helped him. Well, I was making him stronger as he was dementing.
Wow. Meryl,
so it really became, that was a big flag. And there are lots of issues. Go take a car away from a 56-year-old guy, especially a sports car. But we have to do it to protect other people. We have to get ahead of the disease. So there are huge issues, and nobody seems to want to have a conversation. So thank you. This happens to be National Alzheimer's Month, Caregivers Month, home care, long-term care, all bundled up together.
Well, again, I commend you for doing the right thing and, putting your husband before your career and before money. There's not a lot of people that would do that either. And I have to say, you talked about your book being an honest book, and that's probably why it's a New York Times bestseller. Slow Dancing with a Stranger, if you're just now joining the show with Meryl Comer, Comer, is the author of the book. We're talking about Alzheimer's. It's just such a sad disease. I can't even imagine dealing with that. Someone that you love basically forgetting everything.
They forget who you are. They forget this disease slowly shuts down the brain, and you then lose your ability to stand. I mean, but you watch a loved one in slow motion disappear in front of your eyes, and there's a great deal of paranoia. I will say that 70% of families try to take care of a loved one at home. I mean, that's what we do for our loved ones. But there's always an episode that, where the wife feels endangered, their young children at home, and that's how people end up being institutionalized. And then once they're institutionalized, all the care is out of pocket. People assume that Medicare picks up the charge. No, it doesn't. And that's how families go bankrupt. Many families, I guess Medicaid now spends about $24 billion on families who go bankrupt and use up their life savings to take care of a loved one.
Well, we've only got a couple more minutes. Is there anything that we should know? How can you slow down Alzheimer's?
How can you? Well, right now, the only thing we have is what's good for the heart is good for the brain.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
So whatever you're doing for your heart, right now they say that exercise, be healthy. But the reality is you are 50% more likely to get a disease like this if you've had a concussion from sports, if you're overweight, if you have a metabolic disorder, if you have diabetes. So there are lots of factors that play into that. And think about the young men and women who came back from war. We owe them a future. But a lot of the issues that are around post-traumatic stress also increase dementia, anything like that. So this is not just an old person's disease.
Mm-hmm.
This is an issue now that is much, much broader, and we need to solve it. We need to prevent it before it ever happens.
Well, and you said that your husband was only 56 years old. That is so young. And I know that Alan had a question for you.
Meryl,
Sure.
you had mentioned that your husband was misdiagnosed, and I would imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine that happens a lot because with this disease comes other symptoms like anxiety, depression, irritability, and so it must be easy to get misdiagnosed. Does that make a huge factor? Would getting diagnosed earlier rather than later, since there's no cure, does it make a difference?
It does make a difference, and you ask a great question. Families can put their lives in order. They can let their loved ones know what their last wishes are. You can decide to get rid of that crappy job and live the moment. Live with people in a space as long as you can, because there will be a time when the window shuts. Smart people hide out in this disease, so they may be fine one moment and they're not fine the next. And what happens is the brain goes into overdrive, so you're always compensating. It's harder for you to do things, but you look pretty good to most people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the tricky part about this disease, and it's different with everybody. But I will tell you that when kids come home from college, the sale of Aricept, which is one of the 4 drugs they have that help to manage symptoms for a while, that skyrockets. After Christmas, kids come home from college. Unfortunately, then all of a sudden they're saying, what's going on with dad or mom?
Wow.
And by the way, women are more impacted than men.
Wow.
Bernadette, you need to know that.
Oh, well.
Not
No, I
only-
do need to know that.
Well,
Absolutely.
all women need to know that because we outlive men statistically.
Mhm.
Right.
So we're more prone to get it. 85 plus is the fastest growing segment in our country. There are also sex-based differences that we're just learning. If it's on the maternal side, you're more at risk. Women also go into the disease faster than men.
Wow. Well,
And we're 2/3 of caregivers.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. We're out of time, unfortunately. You're going to have to come back. You're just going to have to come back.
You were very generous with your time and great questions from everybody.
Well, thank you so much. And like I said, you're going to have to come back because this is a big problem and we need to address it regularly. You're listening to One Life Radio. We're going to be coming back right after the break. That was Meryl Comer. She is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Slow Dancing with a Stranger. 100% of the proceeds will support Alzheimer's research. We'll be right back.